You want to know how I ended up bulldozing my mother-in-law's $6 million Hamptons mansion with her still inside? Fine. But in my defense, Patricia Harrington always said I'd never amount to anything. As it turns out, I am one hell of a heavy equipment operator. But let me rewind. The night everything detonated, I was standing in the grand dining room of Harrington House, the family's Connecticut estate, wearing a navy silk dress I'd bought on clearance at TJ Maxx and accessorized with a smile I'd practiced in the mirror for 3 years. 30-plus guests filled the room. Crystal chandeliers. Enough silverware at each setting to perform minor surgery. All assembled to celebrate Charles Harrington's 70th birthday. I was seated at the far end of the table, strategically placed next to the service door, so the waitstaff could bump my chair every time they brought out another overpriced course. 3 years in this family, and I had never made it past the servant-adjacent seating. My husband, Trent Harrington, sat at the opposite end, close to his mother. And even closer to Whitney Davenport. Whitney fucking Davenport. She was draped over Trent like a couture blanket, her manicured fingers resting on his forearm, her lips permanently fixed in that smug little smirk she'd been aiming at me since the day Trent brought her to our first anniversary party. Yes. Our anniversary party. He brought his mistress. Patricia had introduced Whitney as Trent's special friend. I'd smiled. I'd poured wine. I'd filed the memory away in the mental folder labeled "Things I Will Burn to the Ground." That night, Charles Harrington raised a toast. He looked tired, beaten down, the way men look when they've spent 40 years married to a woman who files her own teeth to points. He thanked everyone for coming. He thanked Patricia for organizing. He did not thank me. Of course. In 3 years, no Harrington had ever thanked me for anything. I cooked the Thanksgiving turkey alone last year. Patricia took credit. I organized Charles's medical records when he had his heart scare. Trent told everyone it was a concierge service. I scrubbed their bathrooms once, when the cleaning lady quit, because Patricia said it would be good for me. I did it. I kept my head down. I kept my promise to my grandfather. But that promise had an expiration date. And it was tonight. Patricia stood, tapping her champagne glass with a diamond ring the size of a grape. The room quieted. She was wearing a white Chanel suit, her silver hair lacquered into a helmet, her smile as warm as a frozen scalpel. "Family," she began, her voice dripping with that particular Connecticut lockjaw affectation that makes every sentence sound like a royal decree. "Legacy. These are the values that built Harrington Manor. For 60 years, we have been the gold standard in luxury home furnishings. My husband, Charles, has steered this company with vision. My son, Trent, will one day inherit that mantle. And on that day, he will need a partner who is his equal." She turned and looked directly at me. Every head swiveled. Every pair of eyes landed on my face. I kept my expression neutral, my hands folded in my lap. Somewhere in the kitchen, a timer went off. No one moved to check it. "Vanessa," Patricia said, drawing out each syllable like she was savoring a particularly expensive piece of chocolate. "You came into this family 3 years ago with nothing. Quite literally nothing. No family name. No money. No education worth mentioning. Your father is a factory worker in Ohio. A machinist." She said the word machinist the way someone else might say cockroach infestation. "We welcomed you. We clothed you. We fed you. And what have you given us in return?" She paused for dramatic effect. Whitney Davenport squeezed Trent's arm. Trent stared at his salad fork like it contained the secrets of the universe. "Nothing," Patricia answered herself. "You have given us nothing. No air. No social connections. No business opportunities. You are, and I say this with all the love in my heart, a leech. A gold-digging, bottom-feeding, trailer park little leech who saw a wealthy family and latched on like a tick." A few guests tittered nervously. My face remained calm. "Trailer park?" I murmured. "I grew up in a house, Patricia. with indoor plumbing and everything. Her eyes narrowed. Don't you dare sass me, you ungrateful little. Patricia, Charles said quietly. No one listened to Charles. That was the family dynamic. Patricia was the sun. Everyone else orbited or burned. I am protecting this family, Patricia declared, and from her Chanel bag she produced a document. Thick. Crisp. Professionally bound. She hurled it across the table. It skidded through the butter dish and came to rest beside my water glass. Divorce papers. You will sign them now. You will leave this house tonight. You will take nothing with you because nothing here is yours. That dress you're wearing? I bought it. That jewelry? Costume. Worthless, like you. You will walk out that door with exactly what you walked in with 3 years ago, nothing. The room was silent. I could hear Whitney breathing. It sounded like a small, satisfied animal. I looked at Trent. He was still studying that fork. I had shared a bed with this man for 3 years. I had made him coffee every morning. I had picked up his dry cleaning and scheduled his dental appointments and listened to him complain about his mother while he did absolutely nothing to stand up to her. And now he couldn't even meet my eyes. Trent, I said. My voice was steady. Is this what you want? He flinched. Finally looked up. His eyes were the pale blue of a swimming pool someone forgot to clean. It's for the best, Nessa. You know? We've grown apart. Grown apart, I repeated. Is that what we're calling it when you spend every Thursday night with Whitney and tell me you're at business dinners? Whitney's smirk tightened. Trent's face reddened. Patricia cackled. Oh, she knows. Patricia crowed. Of course she knows. Everyone knows. The gardener knows. The mailman knows. The only person who ever pretended not to know was you, Vanessa, because you didn't want to lose your meal ticket. I picked up the divorce papers. Thumbed through them. It was a clean document, I'll give Patricia that. She had lawyers who knew their business. I would leave with nothing. No alimony. No property. No claim on the Harrington fortune. The dress on my back was specifically listed as an asset to be returned. Sign it, you little gold digger, Patricia hissed. Sign it and crawl back to whatever Ohio cornfield you slithered out of. I looked at her. I looked at Charles, who had closed his eyes, who had let this happen. I looked at the guests, their faces lit with the particular glee of people watching a public execution that isn't happening to them. And I smiled. Okay. I pulled a pen from my clutch. Not a Mont Blanc. Not a status symbol. A basic Bic, the kind you buy in a 10-pack at the drugstore. Patricia watched my hand like a hawk watches a mouse. I unscrewed the cap. I found the signature line. And I signed. But I didn't sign Vanessa Harrington. I signed Vanessa Kane. For a moment, no one noticed. Patricia snatched up the papers, held them to the light, and her triumphant grin froze when she saw the name. Kane, she said. What is this? Some pathetic attempt to reclaim your maiden name before I even throw you out. Caldwell was my maiden name, I said softly. Kane is my real name. It was my mother's name. It's the name on the deed to the company my grandfather built. I stood up. I was no longer the meek, silent daughter-in-law who scrubbed toilets. I was someone else entirely. Let me explain something to you, Patricia. 3 years ago, I married into this family because I made a promise to my grandfather on his deathbed. He was friends with Charles's father. He asked me to look after this family, to protect the Harrington legacy, for 3 years. So I did. I hid who I was. I let you treat me like garbage. I cooked your meals and cleaned your house and smiled while you called me a leech. And I did it because I keep my promises. I turned to Charles. His eyes were open now. Wide. Frightened. Charles, I said, my voice calm and clear. Harrington Manor has been the primary supplier for Silverline Capital's hospitality portfolio for 3 years. Those contracts? I approved every single one of them. As majority shareholder of Silverline Capital, I personally guaranteed your company's revenue stream. I did it as a wedding gift. A gift you just threw in my face. The room went dead silent. Someone dropped a fork. It clattered on the marble floor like a gunshot. Patricia laughed. It was a brittle, ugly sound. Silverline Capital? You? You're the majority shareholder of a multi-billion-dollar private equity firm? You, who can't even operate the espresso machine without help. I didn't answer her. I pulled out my phone. Dialed. Put it on speaker. The call connected on the first ring. A deep, steady voice filled the dining room. Ms. Kane. Gabe, I said. Initiate clean slate protocol on Harrington Manor. All contracts. All credit lines. All supply chain guarantees. Terminate everything. Effective immediately. There was no hesitation. Already in motion, Ms. Kane. The termination notices are hitting their corporate servers right now. Legal has been copied. The banks have been notified. I'm also flagging their outstanding loans for immediate review. Any preference on the speed of collapse? Fast, I said. Make it fast. Understood. Anything else? Yes. Patricia Harrington has been running a little side project. Industrial espionage. She planted 27 employees inside Caldwell Precision Parts in Ohio. My father's company. They've been stealing proprietary designs and funneling them to Harrington Manor for 2 years. The FBI has a file. Make sure they move on it tonight. Consider it done. Thank you, Gabe. My pleasure, Ms. Kane. I hung up. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear Patricia's heart breaking from across the room. Her face had gone white. Then red. Then a mottled purple that clashed horribly with her Chanel suit. Charles rose from his chair. His phone was already buzzing. Then buzzing again. Then buzzing continuously, a cascade of alerts that he didn't bother to check because he was staring at me like I had just grown a second head. You, he whispered. You're the owner of Silverline. Majority shareholder, I corrected. My grandfather founded it. He left it to me. I've been running it through Gabe for the past 3 years while I played house with your son. And before you ask, yes, I am worth more than your entire family. By a factor of about 40. You're welcome for the 3 years of free revenue, by the way. Patricia lunged. I saw it coming, the raised hand, the manicured nails, the blind fury of a woman who had never been told no in her life. She swung at my face. I caught her wrist. The room gasped. Patricia's eyes bulged. I held her arm in midair, my grip solid, my expression bored. Touch me again, I said quietly, and I will own this house before dessert. Actually, you know what? I might own it anyway. The Harrington Manor accounts show some very interesting irregularities, Patricia. Ghost vendors. Offshore payments. Embezzlement disguised as consulting fees. I've had forensic accountants on this for 6 months. The IRS is going to have a field day. So go ahead. Hit me. Give me one more reason. She didn't hit me. She was trembling. Her face was wet. Not with tears, with sweat, or maybe rage, or maybe the dawning realization that she had spent 3 years torturing a woman who could buy and sell her entire bloodline without checking her bank balance. I released her wrist. She stumbled backward. Whitney Davenport was already edging toward the door, her smirk long gone, replaced with the look of someone who had just realized she'd bet on the wrong horse. Trent was frozen in his chair, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping on a dock. I picked up my clutch. Smoothed my dress. Smiled at the assembled guests, all of whom were staring at me with a mixture of terror and fascination and the particular hunger of people who knew they were witnessing the single most scandalous event in Fairfield County history. "I want to thank you all," I said, "for being here tonight. You've been a wonderful audience." "And Patricia?" "One last thing." She looked at me. For the first time in 3 years, she looked at me and actually saw me. "Those 27 employees you planted in my father's factory? I've known about them since month 2. I tracked every single one. I have their emails, their file transfers, their bank accounts, the offshore accounts you used to pay them. I have enough evidence to put you in federal prison for a very long time. The FBI is going to raid your offices within the hour. I suggest you call your lawyer." "Oh, wait, your lawyer is on Silverline's retainer. I fired him this morning." I turned and walked toward the grand foyer. Behind me, chaos erupted. Charles was shouting. Patricia was shrieking, something about her baccarat, something about her legacy, something about how I would regret this. Trent was still sitting at the table, utterly silent, a statue of a man who had just watched his entire life evaporate. The front door was heavy oak. I pulled it open myself. No butler. No driver. Just me, the night air, and a black Maybach waiting in the circular driveway. Gabe had sent it. Of course he had. Gabe always knew what I needed before I knew myself. I climbed into the back seat. The door closed. The car pulled away from Harrington House, and I did not look back. The driver, a woman in a sharp black suit, glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Where to, Miss Kane?" I leaned my head against the leather seat and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 3 years. "Manhattan. The penthouse." "Yes, ma'am." I closed my eyes. The car was quiet. The world outside was dark and full of lights, and somewhere behind me, Patricia Harrington was learning the hard way that some sleeping dogs don't just wake up. They bite. They maul. They bulldoze. Literally. But we'll get to that. 40 minutes later, I stepped into the lobby of a skyscraper on Park Avenue. The doorman, a man named Hector who had known me for years, tipped his hat. "Welcome home, Ms. Kane." "Thank you, Hector." The private elevator took me to the top floor. The doors opened directly into the penthouse. 3,000 square feet of marble and glass, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline, art on the walls that would make a museum curator weep, and a man in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit waiting for me in the living room with a glass of Macallan 25 in his hand. Gabriel Reyes. Gabe. 41 years old, silver at his temples, dark eyes that missed nothing, and cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass. He had been my grandfather's right hand. Now he was mine. He was also, not that I'd ever admit it out loud, the most attractive man I had ever met. But that was a thought for another day. Or never. "Rough night?" he asked, handing me the glass. I took a long sip. The scotch burned in the best possible way. Patricia called me a gold-digging, bottom-feeding, trailer park leech. In front of 30 people. Then she threw divorce papers at me. And? I signed. Then I cancelled every contract, froze their credit lines, and told the FBI to raid their offices. Gabe's mouth curved into a slow smile. It was the kind of smile that made corporate lawyers resign and competitors sell their companies at a loss. Clean slate protocol is live. Harrington Manor's stock is already down 18% in after-hours trading. Their lead bank just called an emergency meeting. By tomorrow morning, their market cap will be in freefall. Good. And the FBI? They'll have Patricia in custody before sunrise. The evidence package we sent over was comprehensive. Gabe nodded, his expression shifting slightly. Your father called. Henry. He saw the news alert about Harrington Manor. He's confused. He doesn't understand what's happening. My heart clenched. My father. Henry Caldwell. The kindest, most decent man I had ever known. He had built Caldwell Precision Parts with his own hands, starting in a rented garage in Dayton, Ohio, 40 years ago. He had raised me alone after my mother died. He had taught me how to read a balance sheet, how to treat employees with respect, how to stand up for myself. And for the past 2 years, he had been slowly watching his company bleed to death, never understanding why. Because Patricia Harrington had put 27 spies inside his factory. "I need to call him," I said. "It's late. He'll be asleep." "He won't sleep. Not after that news alert." I pulled out my phone and dialed. He picked up on the second ring. "Nessa?" His voice was rough with worry. "Sweetheart, I just saw something on the news about Harrington Manor. They're saying the company is collapsing. Are you okay? Do you need me to come get you?" My eyes filled with tears. That was my father. His world was crumbling, and his first thought was whether I needed a ride. "Dad, I'm fine. I'm actually better than fine. I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you years ago." "What is it, baby girl?" I took a deep breath. Mom's maiden name was Kane. Her father, your father-in-law, was Arthur Kane. He founded a company called Silverline Capital. When he died, he left it to me. All of it. I'm the majority shareholder. Silence on the line. Then, Silverline Capital? The private equity firm? The one that's been placing all those contracts with my factory? Yes. That was me. I'd been secretly routing business to Caldwell Precision for 3 years, trying to keep you afloat. But Patricia Harrington found out. She planted 27 people inside your company to steal your designs. She was going to drive you out of business so Harrington Manor could buy your patents for pennies. I'm so sorry, Dad. I should have told you. I should have protected you better. More silence. I could hear him breathing. When he spoke again, his voice was thick. 27 people? The FBI is rounding them up tonight. They'll call you in the morning. You'll need to give a statement. My own daughter, he said slowly. My own daughter is a billionaire, and I've been sending her birthday checks for $50. I laughed, and a tear spilled down my cheek. I kept every one of those checks, Dad. I never cashed a single one. I have them in a box in my closet. Well, hell. He let out a shaky breath. Well, hell, Nessa. I don't know whether to be proud or furious. Be proud. Please be proud. I'm so sorry I kept this from you. I made a promise to Grandpa. I had to see it through. I'm proud of you, baby. I've always been proud of you. He paused. Those people. The Harringtons. How bad did they hurt you? Pretty bad, Dad. And how bad are you going to hurt them back? I looked at Gabe, who was watching me with that calm, steady gaze. I looked at the Manhattan skyline, glittering through the windows. I thought about Patricia's face when I caught her wrist. I thought about Trent's silence, year after year. I thought about the 27 spies and the 2 years of stolen work and the way my father had called me every Sunday asking if I was happy, and I had lied and said yes. Bad, Dad. Really, really bad. Good, he said. That's my girl. We talked for a few more minutes. I promised to fly out to Ohio as soon as things settled. He promised to cooperate with the FBI. When I hung up, I felt lighter than I had in years. And heavier, too. The weight of all those secrets finally lifted. The weight of what was still to come. Gabe refilled my glass. The FBI just confirmed. They're moving on Harrington Manor's headquarters in Greenwich. Patricia's home office here in Connecticut. And Caldwell Precision in Ohio. Simultaneous raids. They're expecting arrests within the hour. Good. What about Patricia's personal assets? Frozen. We have the forensic accounting report ready to release to the press. Embezzlement, tax fraud, industrial espionage. She's looking at 15 to 20 years, minimum. And Trent? Gabe's expression flickered, something dark, something personal. Trent Harrington will be lucky to get a job selling used cars when we're done with him. His trust fund is tied to Harrington Manor stock. By tomorrow, it'll be worth about as much as a cup of gas station coffee. Poetic. I try. He set his glass down. There's one more thing. Patricia put out a call to her lawyer. The one we fired. He's scrambling, but he reached out to an old contact, Sterling Croft. My blood chilled. Sterling Croft. Wall Street raider. Corporate predator. The man who had tried to destroy Silverline Capital 15 years ago, when my grandfather was still alive. Arthur Kane had beaten him back, but it had cost him. Some people said the stress of that fight had put my grandfather in an early grave. Croft, I said. What's his connection to Patricia? We're still digging. But it looks like he's been quietly backing her plays. The offshore accounts she used to pay the spies? They trace back to a shell company that ties to Croft's network. He wanted Caldwell Precision's patents. He was going to use Harrington Manor as a front to acquire them, then strip the company and sell the pieces. I stood up and walked to the window. The city spread out below me, a grid of light and shadow, millions of lives playing out in apartments and offices, none of them knowing that a war was about to start. Croft doesn't know I own Silverline, I said. He thinks he's dealing with a weakened Harrington family. He's going to try to scoop up their assets when they crash. He's already made a move. A lowball offer to buy Harrington Manor's debt from the banks. He wants to own them outright by the end of the week. Then let's give him a surprise. I turned back to Gabe. We're going to let Croft think he's winning. Let him buy up the debt. Let him feel invincible. And then we're going to remind him exactly who the Kanes are. My grandfather beat him once. I'm going to finish the job. Gabe smiled again. That smile. It did things to my insides that I was not prepared to examine. Phase 1 is done, I said. Patricia just doesn't know she's already in checkmate. And Phase 2? I drained my glass. Phase 2 is where we have some fun. Call the team. We have a country club gala to attend this weekend. Patricia is hosting. She doesn't know it yet, but I'm going to be there. As Vanessa Kane? As Vanessa Kane. Let's remind Palm Beach what real money looks like. Gabe nodded and pulled out his phone. I stayed by the window, watching the city. Somewhere in Connecticut, FBI agents were knocking on Patricia Harrington's door. Somewhere in Ohio, 27 spies were about to learn the hard way that my father's company was not the easy target they thought it was. And somewhere in a penthouse in Manhattan, I was finally, truly, gloriously free. I thought about the last 3 years. The dinners I had cooked and never been thanked for. The parties where I had been introduced as Trent's little wife and then ignored. The nights I had spent alone in a guest bedroom while Trent was with Whitney. The morning Patricia had dumped a cup of cold coffee on my head because I had made it wrong. The afternoon she had told me, in front of her bridge club, that my mother had died young because poor people don't take care of themselves. I had swallowed all of it. Every insult. Every humiliation. Every single moment of being treated like I was less than nothing. And now I was going to spit it all back. I smiled at my reflection in the window. The woman looking back at me was not the meek, silent daughter-in-law who scrubbed toilets and folded napkins and kept her eyes on the floor. This woman was a predator. A billionaire. A Kane. And she was just getting started. The FBI raided Harrington Manor's Greenwich headquarters at 6:47 the next morning. By 6:52, Patricia Harrington was in handcuffs on her own front lawn, still wearing her silk bathrobe, screaming about her civil rights while her neighbors filmed the whole thing on their iPhones. The video hit Twitter before I finished my first espresso. I watched it in my penthouse kitchen, barefoot, wearing an old Ohio State sweatshirt that had belonged to my mother. Gabe sat across from me, scrolling through his tablet, rattling off updates like he was reading the morning weather. 23 of the 27 planted employees have been detained. The remaining 4 are in custody in Ohio. Your father is at the Dayton FBI field office giving his statement right now. He says to tell you he's wearing his good jacket. I smiled into my coffee. The one with the elbow patches? That exact one. Good. He always says you can't trust a man in a cheap blazer. Gabe continued. Harrington Manor stock is down 62% in pre-market trading. Their board has called an emergency meeting for noon. 3 of their largest retail partners have already announced they're suspending orders pending the outcome of the investigation. And Charles Harrington just filed for legal separation from Patricia. That made me look up. Charles? Mr. Yes dear, whatever you say dear actually grew a spine? Apparently watching your wife get perp-walked in front of the gardenias is clarifying. Gabe's tone was dry as toast. He's also requested a meeting with you. Through his personal attorney. He says he wants to apologize. He can get in line. I set my mug down. What about Trent? Trent checked into the Palm Beach Ritz-Carlton last night with Whitney Davenport. Room service bill was $900. They ordered a lot of champagne for 2 people whose world just ended. They're celebrating. They think Patricia's arrest means the obstacle is gone and Whitney can slide right into my spot. That would be my assessment, yes. I stood up, stretched, and walked to the window. The city was bright and sharp in the morning light. Somewhere down there, 1 million people were going about their ordinary lives. And somewhere in Florida, my soon-to-be ex-husband was toasting my destruction with his mistress, blissfully unaware that I wasn't the one who had been destroyed. They're still at the hotel? Checked in last night. No checkout time scheduled. Perfect. Book me a flight to Palm Beach. And call the manager at the Ritz. I want to borrow their ballroom. Gabe's eyebrow lifted a fraction of an inch. For Gabe, that was the equivalent of a standing ovation. The ballroom. For what, exactly? I turned and gave him my sweetest smile. The one that made corporate raiders weep and Patricia Harrington throw divorce papers. We're moving up the timeline on that country club gala. I don't want to wait for the weekend. I want to humiliate them today. The Palm Beach Ritz-Carlton was not, technically, a country club. But it was where country club people went when they wanted to feel even more important than usual. Its ballroom was a cathedral of gold leaf and crystal, regularly rented out for charity galas, political fundraisers, and the kind of weddings where the flower budget exceeded the GDP of a small nation. I knew it well. Trent and I had our rehearsal dinner there. Patricia had spent the entire evening telling the wedding planner how grateful I should be. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, I was walking through the Ritz's marble lobby wearing a red Valentino dress that cost more than Trent's first car. My heels clicked on the floor like a countdown. Gabe walked beside me, his hand resting lightly on my lower back, a gesture that was technically professional but made my skin hum anyway. The manager met us at the ballroom entrance. He was a small, nervous man named Philippe who had managed the Ritz for 20 years and had never, he informed us, been asked to do anything quite like this. The renovations you requested are complete, Ms. Kane, he said, wringing his hands. Although I must say, the speed was rather. Money solves speed problems, Philippe. You know that. He nodded rapidly. Of course. Of course. And the guest list? The invitations went out as instructed? Every member of the Palm Beach Historical Society, every donor to the Harrington Charitable Trust, and every social columnist within 100 miles. Plus a few special guests. I handed him a folded piece of paper. Make sure this woman is seated front and center. Philippe unfolded the paper. Read the name. His face went pale. Miss Kane, this is. I know who it is. Seat her there. I pushed open the ballroom doors. The room was transformed. The stage had been expanded. 2 massive screens flanked it, currently dark. The tables were draped in black linen with red roses as centerpieces. A podium stood center stage, bearing the seal of Silverline Capital. The room was already half full, Palm Beach's elite buzzing with confusion and excitement. They had received invitations just 3 hours ago, an emergency philanthropic announcement from an anonymous benefactor. The promise of free champagne and front-row seats to whatever drama was about to unfold had done the rest. And there, at a table near the front, sat Trent Harrington and Whitney Davenport. They had no idea what they were walking into. Whitney was wearing white, which felt like a metaphor. Trent was nursing a gin and tonic and looking vaguely unsettled, the way a man looks when he senses danger but is too lazy to do anything about it. I waited in the wings. Gabe stood beside me, his hand still on my back. "Nervous?" he asked. "I haven't been nervous since the day I realized Patricia couldn't actually have me deported. I'm just savoring." "You're a little terrifying when you savor." "I know. Isn't it great?" The room filled. The champagne flowed. The chatter rose. And then, at exactly 3:30, the lights dimmed. Philippe walked onto the stage, adjusted the microphone, and said the words I had written for him. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on such short notice. We have a very special announcement tonight. Please welcome the majority shareholder of Silverline Capital, a philanthropist, a business leader, and a woman who needs no introduction, Ms. Vanessa Kane." The screens flared to life. My name appeared in silver letters 30 feet high. And I walked onto the stage. The applause was scattered, confused. A few people recognized me, Vanessa Harrington, the invisible wife, the mouse in the corner, the woman they had ignored at 100 parties. Their faces cycled through confusion, recognition, and then dawning horror. Whitney Davenport dropped her champagne glass. It shattered on the table, and she didn't even flinch. She was staring at me like I had risen from the grave. Which, in a way, I had. Trent's face went gray. The exact color of old oatmeal. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound came out. "Beautiful. Good afternoon," I said into the microphone. My voice filled the ballroom, smooth and warm and absolutely lethal. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Vanessa Kane. Some of you may recognize me as Vanessa Harrington, although that name is about to be legally retired. I am the granddaughter of Arthur Kane, the founder of Silverline Capital. Upon his death, I inherited a controlling interest in the company. I am currently worth, conservatively, $4.3 billion. Give or take. The silence was absolute. You could have heard a diamond drop. I know what you're thinking. Wasn't she the one who picked up Trent's dry cleaning? Yes. That was me. Didn't she serve canapés at the Harrington Christmas party? Also me. Did Patricia Harrington once introduce her as the caterer's assistant? She did, and I smiled, and I passed the shrimp puffs. Because for the past 3 years, I have been living undercover in the Harrington family. I did it to fulfill a promise to my grandfather. That promise is now complete. I let the silence stretch. Took a sip of water. Made eye contact with Trent. He looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. The floor, unfortunately for him, was marble and deeply unsympathetic. Last night, Patricia Harrington was arrested by the FBI on charges of industrial espionage, embezzlement, and fraud. Harrington Manor, the company many of you have done business with, is collapsing as we speak. And I want to be very clear about something, I am the one who made that happen. I personally terminated every contract that was keeping that company alive. I personally provided the evidence that led to Patricia's arrest. And I personally intend to make sure that everyone who enabled her behavior faces the consequences they deserve. I turned to face Whitney's table. She was frozen, a white statue with mascara starting to run. "Whitney Davenport," I said. "You've been sleeping with my husband for 2 years. You attended my anniversary party as his date. You told mutual friends that I was a charity case he'd outgrow. You once left your earring in my bed. That was tacky, by the way. Even for Palm Beach." Whitney's mouth opened. A small, strangled sound came out. Something between a gasp and a whimper. The room turned to stare at her. Dozens of society matrons, the same women who had gossiped with her at luncheons, were now looking at her like she was something stuck to the bottom of their Louboutins. "I'm not going to ruin you," I continued. "I don't need to. You attached yourself to a man whose entire net worth just evaporated. You backed the wrong horse, sweetheart. Enjoy the ride down." I shifted my gaze to Trent. He flinched. Actually flinched, like I was pointing a weapon at him. In a way, I was. "Trent. My soon-to-be ex-husband. You have nothing. Your trust fund is gone. Your family's company is gone. Your mother is going to prison. Your mistress is about to dump you, and if she doesn't, she's dumber than she looks. You spent 3 years letting your mother abuse your wife while you sat there and played with your salad fork. You are the most spineless, pathetic excuse for a man I have ever met. And the worst part? You're not even interesting. You're just bland. A beige wall in a beige room. You bored me, Trent. Even before I hated you, you bored me." He stood up. His chair scraped against the floor, loud and ugly in the silence. His face was trembling. "Nessa, please. Can we just talk? Privately? I didn't know, I didn't understand. You didn't ask. You never asked me a single question about my life. Not one. In 3 years. You didn't know my mother's name. You didn't know where I grew up. You didn't even know my actual last name. You were too busy staring at Whitney's cleavage and hiding from your mother to notice that you were married to the woman who was keeping your entire family off the streets. So no, Trent. We can't talk privately. We're done talking. Forever." He stumbled back from the table, face crumpled. Whitney grabbed her purse and practically sprinted for the exit. The room watched her go, 100 heads swiveling in unison. Someone at the back started to applaud. Then someone else joined. And then the whole ballroom was clapping, a thunderous ovation, and I realized with a start that these people, these shallow, gossipy, champagne-swilling socialites, were on my side. Because I was rich. Because I was powerful. Because I had just performed the most spectacular public execution in Palm Beach history, and they had front-row seats. I raised a hand and the applause quieted. "Thank you. But I'm not done. I came here today to make an announcement. Effective immediately, Silverline Capital is acquiring the Palm Beach Ritz-Carlton. This hotel is now under new management." Gasps. Murmurs. Philippe, standing in the corner, went pale. "As my first act as owner, I'm announcing a new charitable initiative. The Kane Family Foundation will be funding a scholarship program for students from low-income families in Palm Beach County. Full tuition, room and board, for any student who qualifies. The first 20 scholarships will be awarded tonight, in this room, to students whose applications have already been reviewed and approved." Now the applause was genuine. Not performative. Not social climbing. Real, raw, surprised applause from people who had expected scandal and gotten something better. I stepped back from the podium. Gabe was waiting in the wings, his dark eyes shining with something that looked a lot like pride. He handed me a bottle of water. "That was satisfying," he said. "I'm not done. Patricia's still out there. She made bail this morning. She's at the Hamptons house, screaming at her lawyers and burning documents in the fireplace. The FBI will be interested in that. They already know. I tipped them off. But I want something more. I want that house." Gabe tilted his head. "The Hamptons mansion? It's collateral on a secret loan she took out 3 years ago. She used a shell company to hide it, but we traced it. The loan is held by a small bank in Connecticut. I just bought the bank." Gabe stared at me for a full 5 seconds. Then he laughed. It was a rich, warm sound, and it did something to my chest that I was absolutely not going to think about. You bought an entire bank, he said. To get one house. It's a really nice house. What are you going to do with it? I smiled. The smile I'd been practicing for 3 years. The smile that said you have no idea what's coming. I'm going to tear it down. Personally. With a bulldozer. 24 hours later, I was standing on the front lawn of Patricia Harrington's $6 million Hamptons estate with a hard hat on my head and the deed in my hand. It was a beautiful house. Gray shingles, white trim, a wraparound porch, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlantic. Patricia had decorated it with the kind of careful, expensive precision that screamed I have more money than taste. Every throw pillow was monogrammed. Every piece of furniture was white. It looked like a cloud had thrown up inside a pottery barn. Behind me, a construction crew was warming up a Caterpillar D6 bulldozer. A news helicopter circled overhead. 3 local news vans were parked on the street, their reporters doing live stand-ups. A crowd of neighbors had gathered, some in golf carts, some with cocktails in hand, all of them recording on their phones. On the front porch, Patricia Harrington stood in her bathrobe. Again. She seemed to be making a habit of this. Her hair was unbrushed, her face was blotchy, and her eyes were wild with rage and terror and the particular desperation of a woman who had spent 64 years believing she was untouchable and was just now discovering she was not. You can't do this, she screamed. This is my home. I have rights. I have lawyers. I consulted the deed in my hand. Actually, the house is legally mine as of 9 o'clock this morning. The loan you took out against it defaulted. The bank called it in. I own the bank now. So I own your house. And I'm going to tear it down. Piece by piece. With you watching. This is insane. This is America. You can't just bulldoze someone's house because you're angry at them. You're right. I'm not doing it because I'm angry. I'm doing it because I made a promise to myself 3 years ago, on the night you made me sleep in the gardener's shed because I didn't deserve a bedroom in your house. You remember that night, Patricia? It was Christmas Eve. You said I was ruining the family photos by existing. So I slept on a cot next to a leaf blower. And I promised myself that one day, I would take everything from you. Everything you valued. Everything you thought made you better than me. This house is just the beginning. She stared at me, and for the first time I saw real fear in her eyes. Not outrage. Not indignation. Fear. She finally understood that I was not bluffing. I was not negotiating. I was not going to be reasoned with or bought off or intimidated. I was going to bulldoze her house. I climbed onto the bulldozer. The operator, a grizzled guy named Mike who had been demolishing buildings for 30 years, gave me a thumbs up. You sure about this, ma'am? I've never been more sure of anything. He showed me the controls. Forward. Reverse. Blade up. Blade down. It was surprisingly simple. I gripped the levers, my hand steady, my heart pounding with something that felt a lot like joy. Patricia. I shouted over the engine. You have 60 seconds to get off the porch. You wouldn't dare. 50 seconds. She folded her arms. Planted her feet. Defiant to the end. A crowd of neighbors were now screaming at her to get off the porch. Reporters were narrating breathlessly. The helicopter thumped overhead. 30 seconds. I am not leaving my home, you psychotic little gutter rat. 10 seconds. She didn't move. I moved the bulldozer forward. The blade struck the front portico. Wood splintered. Columns cracked. The roof sagged, groaned, and collapsed in a cascade of shingles and beams. And Patricia Harrington dove off the porch, landing in a hedge, still screaming. I pulled the bulldozer back. Surveyed the damage. The front third of the house was gone. The rest was structurally unsound. The monogram throw pillows had been flung across the lawn like confetti. Patricia, I called out. Are you okay? She crawled out of the hedge, covered in leaves and scratches, her bathrobe torn, her dignity in ashes. My baccarat chandelier, she wailed. My grandmother's china. You monster. You absolute monster. I shut off the engine. Climbed down from the bulldozer. Walked over to where she sat in the grass, weeping. 3 years ago, you called me a leech. You called me trailer trash. You told me I would never amount to anything. You planted spies in my father's company. You tried to destroy his life's work. You humiliated me in front of your entire family and expected me to thank you for the privilege. I'm not a monster, Patricia. I'm just a woman who keeps her promises. And I promised myself that you would lose everything. You've lost your company. You've lost your freedom, the trial starts in 6 months, and you're going to prison. You've lost your husband. You've lost your son's respect. And now, you've lost your house. I crouched down so I was at eye level with her. She looked at me, and the hatred in her eyes was almost impressive. It takes a lot of energy to hate someone that much. I almost admired it. Almost. You could have been kind to me, I said quietly. I came into your family ready to love you. I wanted to be part of your life. I would have shared everything with you. But you couldn't see past your own ego. You looked at me and saw a nobody. And now you're the nobody. And I'm the one standing in the wreckage of your house, on national television, with $4 billion and a bulldozer. How does that feel? She didn't answer. She just stared at the ground, tears tracking through the dirt on her face. I stood up. Brushed off my hands. Walked back toward the waiting Maybach where Gabe stood, leaning against the door, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Feel better? He asked. Honestly? Yes. A lot. The structural integrity of that house was already compromised. The foundation was cracked. It would have cost more to repair than it was worth. You did her a favor, really. You're very good at rationalizing property destruction. I've had practice. He opened the car door for me. The FBI called. They found additional evidence in the Hamptons house before you, remodeled it. Bank records. Offshore accounts. Patricia was hiding more than we thought. She's looking at additional charges now. Conspiracy, money laundering, wire fraud. The works. So coming here was a good idea. Coming here was an excellent idea. Also, it made for incredible television. The news helicopter footage is trending. You're trending. The hashtag is bulldozer bride. I laughed. I couldn't help it. I climbed into the car, Gabe sliding in beside me, and as we pulled away from the wreckage, I watched the news vans jostle for position, the neighbors gawk, the police finally arriving to take statements from a woman whose entire world I had just flattened. Literally. Where to now? Gabe asked. Home. Manhattan. I need a shower. And then I want to call my dad. He called while you were on the bulldozer. He said, and I quote, "Tell my daughter I just saw her on Fox News and I have never been prouder." I smiled. The tears came then, finally, hot and sudden. Not tears of sadness. Tears of relief. Tears of freedom. I leaned my head against the window and let them fall. Phase 2 was done. Patricia was finished. And somewhere in the distance, I could still hear the helicopter, its rotors beating like a victory drum. The trial of Patricia Harrington lasted 3 weeks. I testified on day 4, wearing a navy suit and a string of pearls that had belonged to my mother. Patricia's defense attorney tried to paint me as a vengeful ex-daughter-in-law with a grudge. I didn't deny it. "Ms. Kane, would you say you have hostile feelings toward my client?" I looked directly at the jury. 12 ordinary Americans who had probably never set foot in a Hamptons mansion and never would. "I'd say I have accurate feelings toward your client. She stole from my father. She tried to destroy his company. She treated me like garbage for 3 years. If that makes me hostile, then yes. I'm hostile. And yet you're a billionaire. She's facing prison. Haven't you already won? Winning doesn't mean she shouldn't face consequences. That's literally why we have courts. The jury nodded. Patricia's lawyer sat down. On day 17, the verdict came back. Guilty on all counts. Industrial espionage. Wire fraud. Conspiracy. Embezzlement. The judge sentenced her to 18 years in federal prison. Patricia collapsed in the courtroom, sobbing, and had to be helped out by 2 bailiffs. I watched her go from my seat in the gallery, and I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not pity. Just the quiet, clean emptiness of a chapter truly closed. Charles Harrington was there. He sat in the back row, alone, wearing a rumpled suit that looked like it hadn't been pressed in months. After the verdict, he approached me in the courthouse hallway. Vanessa. His voice was hoarse. I know I don't deserve to speak to you. But I wanted to say, I'm sorry. For all of it. For my silence. My cowardice. I should have protected you. I didn't. I'll regret that for the rest of my life. I studied him. In 3 years, I had never once heard Charles Harrington say the words I'm sorry. He had been a ghost in his own house, a man who had traded his backbone for a quiet life. And that quiet life had cost him everything. Thank you, I said. That actually means something. I'm leaving Connecticut. Moving to a little cottage in Vermont. I'm going to paint. Badly, probably. But no one will have to look at it except me. He managed a weak smile. I've also started seeing a therapist. She says I have boundary issues. I told her I have ex-wife issues. She said those are the same thing. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Vermont sounds good, Charles. Send me a painting sometime. I will. He hesitated. Trent isn't doing well. Well. I don't know if you care. But he's hit bottom. I know. I've been keeping track. Will you help him? Not the way you're thinking. But I'll make sure he doesn't starve. Charles nodded, his eyes glistening. He squeezed my hand once, then walked away down the marble corridor, a small man in a rumpled suit, heading toward whatever was left of his life. Trent hit bottom in a Waffle House parking lot in Jacksonville, Florida, at 3 a.m. He had been living in a motel for 6 weeks, drinking his way through the last of his hidden cash reserves, and he had just been fired from his job as a valet at a country club where he used to be a member. The manager had recognized him. Had enjoyed firing him a little too much. He called me from a payphone. I didn't even know payphones still existed. Nessa. His voice was slurred, broken. I know you hate me. I hate me too. I wanted to say, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was such an idiot. I was such a coward. You deserved so much better. I don't want anything from you. I just needed you to know that I know. I know what I did. I was in my penthouse, sitting on the couch with Gabe, watching an old movie. I put the call on speaker. Trent. Are you drunk? Yeah. Very. But that doesn't make it less true. I've been drunk for 2 months and I've been thinking about you every single day. Not because I want you back. Because I finally understand what I threw away. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I treated you like an inconvenience. I let my mother destroy you. I let Whitney use me. I was a pathetic excuse for a husband and an even worse excuse for a human being. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking you to know that I know. I looked at Gabe. His expression was unreadable. I picked up the phone. Trent, where are you right now? Waffle House parking lot. Jacksonville. Is there a rehab facility near you? Silence. Then, there's one about 10 miles away. I looked it up. I've been sitting here for 3 hours trying to work up the courage to call them. Call them. Right now. While I'm on the phone. I don't have insurance anymore. I can't afford. I'll pay for it. All of it. The rehab, the therapy, whatever comes after. But Trent, this is the last thing I will ever do for you. If you waste this chance, I'm done. Forever. Do you understand? He started to cry. Ugly, gulping sobs that cracked through the phone speaker. Why, he choked out. Why would you help me after everything I did? Because your grandfather was friends with my grandfather. Because somewhere underneath all the privilege and the weakness and the terrible choices, I think there might be a decent man. And because I want to prove to myself that I'm not the monster your mother thought I was. But mostly because your grandfather was friends with my grandfather. That's it. That's the only reason. Don't make me regret it. I won't. I swear to God, Nessa, I won't. Call the rehab. Then delete my number. We're done, Trent. For real this time. I know. Thank you. Thank you. I hung up. Set the phone on the coffee table. Leaned back into the couch cushions. That was generous, Gabe said quietly. It was closure. I needed it as much as he did. He might actually get better. Then good for him. I genuinely hope he does. I want him to be happy someday. Just far, far away from me. Gabe reached over and took my hand. His fingers were warm and steady, and something in my chest shifted, the way it always did when he touched me. You're remarkable, he said. You know that? I've been told. Mostly by you. Then maybe you should start listening. I looked at him. The glow of the television flickered across his face. He had been by my side for 3 years. He had watched me marry another man, had executed every order I gave him without question, had never once complained or pushed or asked for more than I was willing to give. And he was still here. Still waiting. Still looking at me with those dark, patient eyes. Gabe, I said. Why have you never gotten married? His mouth curved. I've been busy. Busy doing what? Running a multi-billion-dollar private equity firm for a woman who was pretending to be a housewife. It's surprisingly time-consuming. I laughed. Seriously. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, very softly, I've been waiting for someone to see me. Not as an employee. Not as a business partner. Just as a man. And there's only one person whose opinion I care about. My heart was beating very fast. Gabe. You don't have to say anything. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know. You asked. I answered. He let go of my hand and stood up. It's late. I should go. Stay. The word hung in the air between us. Stay, I said again. Please. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he sat back down, closer this time, and I leaned into him, my head resting against his shoulder, and we watched the rest of the movie in silence. It was the most peaceful night I'd had in 3 years. 6 months later, I flew to a small village in Guatemala. Trent was there, 9 months sober, working with a disaster relief organization. He had helped rebuild a school that had been destroyed in a mudslide. The children called him Senor Trent, which he found both touching and mildly embarrassing. I brought Gabe with me. We found Trent at the school, wearing jeans and a dusty t-shirt, his hands calloused, his face sunburned. He looked 10 years older and somehow 10 years younger at the same time. The alcohol bloat was gone. The weak chin had firmed up. He stood a little straighter. When he saw me, he froze. Then he smiled. It was a different smile from the one I remembered. Quieter. Realer. You came, he said. I said I'd check up on you. I keep my promises. He nodded. His eyes moved to Gabe, and something passed between them. Not hostility. More like recognition. Two men who had both, in very different ways, been shaped by the same woman. You must be Gabe, Trent said. She talked about you. Even back then. She didn't know she was doing it, but she did. Gabe shook his hand. I've heard a lot about you too. None of it good, I'm sure. Some of it good. The recent stuff. Trent laughed. It was a rusty sound, like something that hadn't been used in a while. Come on. I'll show you the school. We walked through the village. Children ran past us, laughing. Women washed clothes in a stream. The air smelled like earth and wood smoke and something green and alive. Trent showed us the classroom he had built, the desks he had sanded by hand, the mural the children had painted on the back wall. It was a rainbow with 17 different shades of blue because the kids couldn't agree on which one was right. I'm going back to school, Trent said, as we stood in the shade of a palm tree. Online courses for now. I want to get my teaching certificate. Middle school science. Kids that age are weird and awkward and they need someone who remembers what that felt like. That sounds perfect for you, I said. And I meant it. He looked at me, and his eyes were wet. I wrote you a letter. 100 letters, actually. I never sent any of them. They're all in a shoebox under my bed. But I want you to have this. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. It was the deed to a small plot of land in Ohio. I recognized the address. It was the lot next to my father's factory. I bought it, he said. With the money I've earned down here. It's not much. A quarter acre. But I thought, your dad might want to expand someday. And if he does, he'll need the space. It's not a gift. It's restitution. I owe your family more than I can ever repay. But this is a start. I took the deed. My hand was trembling. Trent. You don't have to say anything. I don't deserve your thanks. I just wanted to do one thing right. One thing that wasn't selfish or stupid or weak. He took a breath. I'm going to be okay, Nessa. I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to be the kind of man my grandfather would have been proud of. It took losing everything to figure that out. But I got there. Finally. I stepped forward and hugged him. It was the first time I had touched him voluntarily in years. He hugged me back, briefly, respectfully, and then let go. Take care of her, he said to Gabe. I plan to, Gabe said. We left the village as the sun was setting. The children waved from the schoolhouse door. Trent stood among them, a tall, sunburned man in a dusty t-shirt, smiling a quiet smile. On the plane home, I leaned against Gabe's shoulder and cried. Not because I was sad. Because I was proud. Of Trent. Of myself. Of the strange, winding road that had led us all to this moment. He's going to be a good teacher, I said. He is, Gabe agreed. You did that. I just paid for rehab. He did the work. You gave him a reason to try. That's not nothing. I closed my eyes. The engines hummed. Somewhere below us, the lights of Central America glittered in the dark. We got married on my family's ranch in Montana. It was September, and the aspens were turning gold. The ceremony was small. My father walked me down the aisle. He cried the whole way, which made me cry, which made Gabe cry, which made the officiant cry, and by the time we got to the vows, everyone in the audience was a mess. Vanessa Kane, Gabe said, his voice steady despite the tears tracking down his face. You are the most terrifying, brilliant, beautiful woman I have ever met. You drive me insane. You make me laugh. You bulldozed a house with a woman still inside it, and I knew in that moment that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with you. I promise to be your partner. Your equal. Your backup when things get rough. I promise to love you until I'm old and gray and can't remember where I put my keys. I promise to always let you drive the bulldozer. I laughed through my tears. Gabriel Reyes. You are the most patient man on the planet. You waited for me for 3 years while I was married to someone else. You never pushed. You never complained. You just showed up every single day and had my back. You are my best friend. My fiercest ally. The love of my life. I promise to be worthy of you. I promise to make you laugh every single day. I promise to never bulldoze anything without you by my side. We exchanged rings. The officiant pronounced us married. Gabe kissed me, and the small crowd of friends and family cheered, and somewhere in the distance, a hawk circled over the mountains, riding the wind. My father gave a toast at the reception. He stood up, his face still blotchy from crying, and raised his glass. 3 years ago, my daughter called me and told me she was getting married. To a man I'd never met. From a family I knew nothing about. I was terrified. I thought she was making the biggest mistake of her life. He paused. I was half right. She was making a mistake. But my daughter doesn't make the same mistake twice. Today, she married a man who loves her the way she deserves to be loved. Gabe, welcome to the family. Don't screw it up. Everyone laughed. Gabe raised his glass. I'll do my best, sir. And Nessa. My father's voice thickened. Your mother would be so proud of you. You got her fire. Her strength. Her stubbornness. And her heart. I love you, baby girl. I crossed the room and hugged him, and we both cried again, and someone started a chant of kiss. Kiss, which was directed at me and Gabe, and we obliged, and the party went on until the stars came out and the mountains disappeared into the dark. 5 years later. Silverline Capital had grown into a global powerhouse. We had invested in renewable energy, affordable housing, medical research. The Kane Family Foundation had funded scholarships for over 10,000 students. My father's company, Caldwell Precision Parts, had tripled in size and was now the leading employer in his Ohio county. He had remarried a lovely woman named Diane who ran a bakery and made him laugh every single day. Patricia Harrington was still in prison. She would be for another 13 years. I sent her a Christmas card every year. No message. Just a photo of me and Gabe and our growing family, smiling on the Montana ranch. Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Absolutely. Charles was still in Vermont, painting strange abstract landscapes that he sent me every year on my birthday. I hung them in my office. They were terrible in a way that was almost magnificent. Trent was teaching 7th grade science in Arizona. He had married a school librarian named Elena. They had a baby on the way. He sent us a card every Christmas too, always with a short, handwritten note. Last year said, the kids learned about volcanoes. I set one off in the parking lot. The principal was not impressed. Elena laughed for 3 days. I'm happy. Thank you. Trent. I kept every one of those cards in a box in my closet, next to the birthday checks from my father I had never cashed. And then there was Gabe. And our twins. A boy and a girl, born 2 years after the wedding. We named them Arthur and Elena. Arthur after my grandfather. Elena because it was a beautiful name, and when I told Trent's wife about it, she cried. We were sitting on the porch of the Montana ranch, Gabe and I, watching the twins chase each other through the tall grass. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Arthur was trying to teach Elena how to throw a baseball. Elena was not interested. She was more interested in the butterfly she had caught in a jar and was now lecturing her brother about Lepidoptera wing patterns. She was 5. She used the word Lepidoptera. I had no idea where she learned it. She's going to run the world someday, Gabe said. She's going to run the world and also drive us completely insane. Those aren't mutually exclusive. I leaned my head against his shoulder. His arm came around me, familiar and warm. The twins shrieked with laughter. The hawk circled overhead. The mountains stood silent and ancient against the sky. You know what I was thinking about today? I said. The bulldozer? How did you know? Because you always think about the bulldozer when you're feeling nostalgic. He kissed the top of my head. It was a great bulldozer. It really was. I'm glad you did it. Patricia deserved it. And it made for incredible television. I laughed. You're still not tired of me? I have never been tired of you. Not for one single second. Not even when you bought an entire bank just to foreclose on a house. Not even when you flew to Guatemala to check on your ex-husband. Not even when you cried for 3 hours after watching a documentary about sea turtles. You are the most exhausting, exhilarating, extraordinary person I have ever known. And I would do all of it again. Every single minute. I looked up at him. The man who had waited for me. The man who had never doubted me. The man who had taught me that love wasn't about hiding who you were, but about finding someone who saw all of you and stayed anyway. The best revenge, I said, is a life well lived. That and a bulldozer. That and a bulldozer. The twins ran up to us, demanding to be lifted onto the porch swing. Arthur had grass stains on his knees. Elena had released the butterfly and was now explaining its migration patterns in exhaustive detail. Gabe scooped them both up, one in each arm, and they squealed with delight. I sat on the porch, watching my family, and I thought about the night Patricia Harrington threw divorce papers at me across a dinner table. I thought about the 27 spies. The FBI raids. The country club gala. The bulldozer. The trial. The rehab. The wedding. All of it, every insane, beautiful, terrible moment, had led me here. To this porch. To this man. To these children. To this life. And you know what? I'd do it all again. Every single bit. Even the bad parts. Especially the bad parts. Because the bad parts were what made the good parts so unbelievably sweet. I got up from my chair and walked across the porch to where Gabe was pushing the twins on the swing. I wrapped my arms around him from behind and pressed my face against his back. I love you, I said. I love you too. No, I mean, I really love you. Like, buy a bank and bulldoze a house love you. He turned around, his dark eyes shining. That's the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me. It's a gift. It really is. He kissed me, and the twins made gagging noises, and the sun slipped behind the mountains, and the world was quiet and full and good. That's the thing about revenge. It feels amazing in the moment. The bulldozer. The courtroom. The look on Patricia's face when she realized I wasn't bluffing. All of that was deeply, profoundly satisfying. But it wasn't the point. The point was this. The porch. The sunset. The kids. The man. The peace. The point was building a life so full, so happy, so ridiculously good that the past couldn't touch it. Patricia Harrington called me a gold-digging leech. She humiliated me. She tried to destroy my father. She planted 27 spies in his company. And for a long time I let her. Because I was keeping a promise. Because I believed in honoring my word. Because I thought if I just tried hard enough, if I was just good enough, they would eventually see me. They never did. And that was their loss. Because I was never the person they thought I was. I was never the meek little daughter-in-law who scrubbed their toilets and folded their napkins and smiled through their abuse. I was Vanessa Kane. I was a billionaire. I was a force of nature. And I had spent 3 years pretending to be small so that one day I could show them exactly how big I really was. So if you ever find yourself in a situation like mine, if someone underestimates you, dismisses you, treats you like you're nothing, remember this story. Remember that the quietest person in the room might be the most dangerous. Remember that patience is a weapon. And remember that if all else fails, you can always buy a bulldozer. Just make sure you give them time to get off the porch first.